So we're going live on YouTube now.
Hi everybody, I'm Kimberly Hare, and I'm a writer and a coach and a facilitator and a teacher. And I came across this understanding that's sometimes called the three principles in 2009, 2010, and absolutely life-changing. So grateful. But it's funny, you know, because if you watch a lot of the other webinars on this resource, and indeed on the net generally, lots of people have got a backstory, you know, and very moving, and the kind of transformation that people have experienced through understanding this. I don't, except that if you'd have met me in 2009, I would have said to you sincerely that I had a wonderful life. I really thought I had it all cracked, all sussed. It was really smug, actually, looking back. But I had this great business, very successful business. I had this great team of people, wonderful clients. I traveled all over the world, you know, financial success, lovely relationships, all of that. And all I can say, honestly, now looking back with the benefit of hindsight, is I had no idea what was on offer. None. And just in terms of I don't know how to describe it really, the richness, the depth of my life now, the joy, and it's got nothing to do, of course, with external circumstances. So just this kind of awesome, in the real true sense of the word, this awesome realization of what life is. And I've always loved the word thrive, and so my workshops and retreats are called the Heart of Thriving. And yeah, so that's what I do. That's how I spend my time these days, 100% pointing people in this direction, either one-to-one or in groups. And I also work a lot with leadership teams in businesses, because I think this understanding helps you do everything better, including leadership, as well as parenting and having relationships and all the other things. So yeah, I don't really have a backstory, but the transformation nonetheless for me has been huge, absolutely huge. So I wanted to talk about thriving, and I've kind of got two big insights, I guess. They won't come as a surprise to you, Anne, but they've been huge for me. And then three, not necessarily smaller ones, but more kind of supporting ones that come out of those first two.
What interested me was I've met or spoken to a lot of people who knew you before you had this understanding, and have come into the understanding because they came across you. And they all say that they were interested in the understanding because of how much you seem to change.
Okay, that's really interesting.
Yeah,
really interesting. Yeah, so Built to Thrive, I've called it. That's you, that is, because I believe we all are, and no matter what it kind of looks like or feels like at the time, that we have this thriving is part of the design. It's the factory setting. So first big one. So the first one is a great big picture of a projector, a slide projector. And this was huge for me, the whole notion of you know, inside out, and that our experience has been coming from out there, even though it looks like it is, that we are living in the feeling of the energy of thought coming through us, not the feeling of the world or the feeling of our circumstances out there. And, you know, we often think of the mind working like a camera, but what I've come to see is it's much more like this. It's much more like a projector. So we are literally constructing and creating our experience of reality moment to moment through thought, and then consciousness is bringing that to life. By the way, there are 5 of these, as I said, so do feel free to ask me questions as we go. And what I found is that thriving is just so much easier when you know where your experience is coming from, and you know that it's not coming from out there, it's not coming from other people. And even though we may forget this from time to time, it just kind of makes it so much easier to navigate life with all of its ups and downs and its circumstances. You know, circumstances indeed are kind of inherently neutral, and until we add meaning. We're the ones that have to add the meaning to it. It's funny, on my workshops, sometimes I do an exercise where I have about 50 different life events, and half of them are what we might call good, and half of them are what we might call bad. And they're all kind of shuffled up. And then in small groups, participants, first of all, they need to kind of agree, come to consensus on an array from good to bad. You know, so what's the best one? What's the worst one? And there's things in there like, you know, you just win, you win 5 million on the lottery, or you know, you get promoted, or you're asked to do a TED talk, or your book gets published, or you get divorced, or you lose a limb, or you go to prison, or, you know. And there's such fascinating conversations about these different life events. And then the second part of the exercise is each person in turn, I ask them, they've got kind of one veto, and they have the power to move one of them. And they can move one of them from worst to best, or vice versa, or somewhere in the middle. And then kind of explain to the others in the group why they did that. And so it's also a really great exercise in deep listening, because the others aren't allowed to kind of speak, particularly during that time. And you can feel it kind of getting very quiet as people explain their reasons for moving. So, like, well, an obvious one is maybe their divorce turned out to be a wonderful thing. Or the promotion, you know, turned out to be not what they'd hoped, and actually meant that they perhaps temporarily lost all sense of kind of balance in their life.
Yeah.
And, you know, even things like the death of a loved one, people sharing very movingly about what's kind of opened up for them since then, and some of the insights that they've had around that, and around relationships more generally, and around love. So yeah, it's a fascinating exercise. But what they all come back and say is, yeah, it's all really neutral until we add meaning through thought. Now, that's not to say, I'm not suggesting for a moment that it's, you know, as human beings, that it's wrong to feel grief or you know, sad or upset or any of these things. As we'll see later, you know, it's perfectly okay to be human. But it just starts to get people dropping some of the duality, I guess, bad, good, bad, good, bad, good. Yeah. So that's that first one, and it's huge. And I'm constantly, even, you know, now, kind of almost 10 years later, it constantly gets more and more profound.
Yeah, it seems so simple, doesn't it? And it just,
yeah,
amazing.
So that's that one, that it's 100% inside out. And it's funny because in my previous work, I'd studied a lot of other things, including NLP, neuro-linguistic programming. And so I'd always realized that thought was a big player, you know, and things like CBT, cognitive behavioral flow. So I always knew that thought was kind of massive. But it wasn't until this understanding that I saw how it's everything. Everything. Yeah. So that's the first one. I don't know if you have any questions about that. Otherwise, we can move on.
There's don't seem to be any questions at the moment. If anyone wants to ask a question that's listening in, just either type into the chat box or raise your hand. There's a way that you can raise your hand there. And if you'd like to, you can come on and ask questions. You can come on and speak to Kimberly on the video if you'd like to. Otherwise, just type into the chat box. So I'll keep an eye on questions there.
Thanks ever so much, Anne.
Okay.
Okay, so second one. This is huge. You know, I mean, there's not... For me, this is where it moves from being, this understanding goes from something that's quite interesting and useful and allows you to navigate life better. But this is the kind of biggie for me. This is the gold dust. That we're already home in the sense of being home in ourselves, in our heart, even when it doesn't feel like we are. And that never goes anywhere. So we're profoundly okay, unbreakable, unperturbable, whole, never broken. And I often use that metaphor of the diamond, that at our core we're a beautiful, perfect diamond. And then throughout life, and again, it's a nice visual metaphor, so I think people can relate to it. So throughout life, this diamond, which is our essence, gets surrounded by horse shit, which is made of thought. That's all it is. But it's our stories, it's our history, it's our baggage, we might call it in another framework. And that kind of surrounds the diamond. And then because we don't want anybody to see that, because it's shameful, we then surround that horse shit with a beautiful layer of pretty nail varnish, which of course is the facade. Or to use a more masculine metaphor, a suit of armor. And that's what we use to kind of show the world. And working in corporate life as much as I do, it's just everywhere. Some people never take that off. And in an attempt to kind of cover up this horse shit, and of course the irony is that if we were to take the mask off or the nail varnish off, once we see that the horse shit is only made of thought, it just starts to drop away, it starts to dissolve, it starts to just fall away very naturally on its own. And then we're left being this diamond and we can just shine.
Yeah. Isn't it funny though that quite often that facade is there to try to hide what we think is there underneath, that we think it's something awful underneath.
I know, and it's the most beautiful thing in the universe.
Mm.
And it's funny because people, again, everybody can see other people's diamonds. Whenever I ask them, or we do various kind of exercises to, gaze at each other, they can see each other. It's like, yeah, I can see yours, but I don't think I've got one. And but of course everybody has. But just that for me is a huge part of thriving, just kind of showing up and shining. And that doesn't mean we're perfect. It doesn't mean we never make mistakes. It doesn't mean we don't screw up. But we're just kind of this unique expression of life. That's what shining means to me.
So when you described your life before you came across this understanding, and that you had all the the relationships and
yeah.
Do you think that was part of the? Would you see that as part of the cover up, or was that just?
I think it was a bit of both. So I'd always, of course, in those days it was still about shining and thriving for me, but it was about doing it. It was about doing it through techniques and strategies and tools, and using very powerful body language and all that kind of stuff, deliberately. And it's so funny. It just strikes me as so funny nowadays, because it was the best I knew at the time. And but I think there was always something inside me that resonated with this idea of that deep down everything was okay. Deep down everything was okay. But yeah, it was then so I don't think I mean, I certainly had horse shit, but I don't think I had a hugely thick layer of nail varnish.
No, it doesn't sound like it, I have to say. No. It doesn't sound like that, but no. Yeah.
But it's still a kind of a metaphor that makes a lot of sense to me. It's that kind of, even the very kind of the darkest things that we think about ourselves, when you see that we've just made that up as well.
And there's a lot of difference there are a lot of people who are putting on a big show of, I've got all this stuff and I'm really happy and I've got these wonderful relationships and I'm doing this wonderful job, but they know that actually inside they don't feel that. Whereas you were feeling that everything.
Oh, I was genuinely, yeah. I was feeling very grateful and very, very lucky, actually, but also rather smug. And I did think that my happiness came from, all of that stuff. It came from the success. It came from the lovely house. It came from, external.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. So home is the factory setting then. The diamond is the real us, the real you. And we have this natural, innate capacity for well-being and resilience, profoundly okay and unbreakable. And the other thing that I've seen, which kind of, I wanted to try and get a picture of a heart around the home, but couldn't find one quickly enough. I think we're made of love. I think that's what we're made of. In fact, I think the whole universe is made of love. And it's a very, very big, big, big love, huge. And it's different from, no, it's not different from, it's the source from which that personal love comes. I sometimes think, I have a little theory that one of the reasons we're also obsessed with, in our culture, with romantic relationships is it's kind of the closest we get for a lot of people. But it's still, even at its best, and it's glorious, I mean, personal relationships are wonderful, but even at their very best, they're a kind of I described it the other day to somebody that it was like, personal love is like a lamp or a fire, and it's delicious and it's lovely to sit in front of. But universal love is like the sun, and even that doesn't, so it's kind of like it's a little glimpse. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And also, once you understand, what I've found is I spent my whole life looking for relationships because I thought that that's what would make me happy. And once you realize that you are love,
yes,
you don't need that. It's not you're not needy anymore. And so
you don't need filling up because because you're already whole. And when you get excuse me, you know, when you get two people in a relationship, well, two people in a relationship who don't understand this, I think it's going to, by unless they're very, very lucky, it's going to be characterized by neediness, by clinginess, by jealousy, by insecurity. And you know, it's not a surprise really when you think about all the stuff that the culture piles on us. I had my 3-year-old great niece stay a couple of weekends ago, and I just saw how much she's already getting at that at 3. You know, even Disney movies, one day your prince will come, you know, all of that already, it's like all going in. So, you know, there's no judgment here. It's that's what we get fed. But yeah, so if you get two people who don't understand this, it's likely to be fraught. But what I find so optimistic and hopeful is even if one of those people sees a glimpse of this understanding, everything can change really fast. Yeah. So, and I love that Jack Pransky quote, all we are is love, peace and wisdom, and the capacity to create the illusion that we're not.
Yeah, I love that whole slide. I love it.
Yeah. So those are the two big ones. Inside out, for me, inside out, knowing where our experience is coming from, moment to moment, and that we're made of love and we're profoundly okay. Or as I heard somebody describe it, and this is real kind of in a nutshell, it's all made up and it's all okay.
Yeah, I love that.
Those are those two things, really. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wish that. I mean, that's why I do the work that I do, because I just once you see that for yourself, it's kind of it's very hard not to then want to share it.
Yes, and if the whole world could see this, just that, what a difference.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's number 2. Oh, this is a biggie for me. So the last 3 are kind of, as I say, they support the first 2 really, but I've picked them out because I think they're, for me and for a lot of my clients, they've been especially valuable. And again, nothing particularly, you know, new or innovative here, but this notion of transience really, really struck me, and continues to. And when we just see the, you know, the way the nature of thought, the nature of experience is transient. And an overused metaphor perhaps, but like clouds in the sky, and realizing that that's changing all the time, but we're not the clouds.
No.
We're the sky. No. And the sky actually doesn't give a toss what the clouds are doing. Well, I imagine the sky doesn't give a toss. I've never asked it, but you know, at the level of that, all metaphors break down at some level. So our thinking isn't you know, your thinking isn't you, your experience isn't you, your story isn't you, your beliefs, values even aren't you. All of the things that we've constructed that make up this so-called self-identity aren't. They're it's all transient and it's all up for grabs.
Yeah.
And for me, just the excitement of that, like what becomes possible, and the fact that we can, you know, if we've created it, we can create something else. I often, when I'm coaching clients, I get them to you know, tell me, well, what they, you know, they usually come in with some presenting thing, whatever it is, and they might say, sometimes I make them, I invite them to kind of draw it on the flip chart, their life. And they might say, oh, well, you know, they're drawing away, and oh, this bit's quite nice, you know, my career's going quite well, and then this bit here is all right, but this bit down here is shit. And what they don't see until they do is that at any point we can literally turn the flip chart page over to a fresh page. And you know, so we can create a new story, we can write a new story. It's still a story, but yeah,
but we're so used to being, especially like at school, and you have to make these decisions now, and this is, you have to make up your mind now what you're going to be for the rest of your life, and this is what, and we're so taught that everything can't change and isn't going to change, and you have you stay in, and it's becoming more and more obvious actually that things do change all the time.
Yeah, well, the things out there change, but also we change, like our moods you know, can change in a heartbeat. Our thoughts changing constantly, our you know, even, I mean, our personality, I think we do have a personality. We, you know, there are things that make Anne and Kimberly, but like so much less fixed than I used to think. And so much a function of our state of mind in the moment. You know, so sometimes we might be anxious, sometimes we might be shy, sometimes we might be incredibly bold and courageous. Still all be you. But yeah, we've developed this kind of habit of wanting things to stand still, I think, so we can measure them. And
describe them too.
Like describe them.
I am this sort of person, or I am that sort of person. When, as you say, 1 minute you might be, and 1 minute you might be completely the opposite.
Yeah. I did a blog last week. I don't know if you caught it, because it was Mental Health Awareness Week, and I went back and did some research on the DSM, you know, the Diagnostic Statistical Manual. And I went right back to when it first started, and just kind of charted how many pages it was each time they brought out a new edition, and how many, you know, how many disorders each time. And again, I know, you know, innocent, I know. But I mean, one of the things that shocked me in there was how recently homosexuality was listed in there as a disorder. And and grief. Like, grief isn't the most natural human thing in the world, but now we've got to make it a disorder. You know, so, and these are the kind of, you know, and then we go to a mental health expert and they give us a diagnosis, and now we're that. And it's really not helpful.
No, it's not. And I, you know, even as a doctor, I've seen,
well, you know better than anybody,
lots of people with those diagnoses who actually then don't have them, you know, are then, because, for example, with things like schizophrenia or bipolar, or, you know, I am that, or I am, no, you're not. And some, you know, once those things can change, and people don't understand that. People don't know that those things can change.
Absolutely. I see it all the time. People with like 20 years, 30 years, you know, of a diagnosis, clinical depression, can't leave the house, you know, it's, I mean, the suffering is real. Not saying that the suffering isn't real, but so transient, all transient. So we have the capacity to bring our thoughts to life, make them real, or let them go by. And we can choose to take it all seriously or not. So seeing thought for what it is, it's such a game changer. And then it doesn't mean anything permanent about me or about life or about other people or about anything. So that we can we can have the thought, oh, my life is rubbish. I'm sure every single person on the planet's had that from time to time. And then we can have a thought, oh, look, there's a robin in my garden. And both of them have the same significance. Rather than the first one telling us something really important. Yeah.
They sound so real, though, and they sound so much more important, don't they? When they're uncomfortable or saying, "Oh, you should," or whatever, those
best trick in the world, best trick in the universe. Yeah, but it's funny, as I see this more and more deeply, I find I do get fooled now and again, but so much more rarely. I kind of can't take it seriously. I can't, or it can't hook me for long. Sometimes I ask myself, where do I think this experience is coming from? Where do I think this feeling is coming from? Nearly got me.
Yeah.
But that wonderful chat, I talk about biscuits and ovens a lot as well. So I don't know if this makes sense to people, but seeing that we are so many people get so worried and fretful about the biscuits they've already baked, metaphorically. So they've had some thinking, they've had an experience, maybe it was a bit crummy. See what I did there?
Yeah, I did. I was impressed.
So, they don't like these biscuits. They're too burnt, or they're not sweet enough, or whatever. And so they spend their whole time kind of, focusing on the biscuits that they baked yesterday. And this understanding for me is about understanding the oven. Because when you understand the oven, you tend to bake better biscuits anyway, but also you don't care because you can do a new batch now and a new batch now and a new batch now. So yesterday's biscuits really don't matter. 10 minutes ago's biscuits don't matter. Look to the oven, look upstream. And then what happens for me is I fall out of that personal thinking into this glorious spaciousness, which is that feeling that we were talking about before you started recording.
Yeah. Yes, there have been days when I've been, as you can imagine, with organizing 100 speakers.
Yes, wow.
And 1 or 2 a day for over 2 months is quite a lot to be organizing, and also doing the website and doing the emails and doing all the setting up the webinars and all of that stuff. So it takes quite a lot of time, and most days I'm fine. I'm calm about it. I mean, because I'm really enjoying it. It's not like work, I'm just really enjoying doing it, and that's fine. And then occasionally there'll be a day where I'm like, just don't know where to go or what, and I can, but then I see there's just lots of thought going, lots of thoughts and lots of thoughts going round and round and round, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay, oh well, I just won't do anything for a bit, and then it might take all day, but then the thought comes down, and And the next day, I'm absolutely fine again. And people keep saying to me, "It must be so stressful. What you're doing is so stressful."
Yeah.
I'm like, no.
I mean, that is so useful for people to see. So useful.
Mm.
And you know, even if we do get caught up temporarily, knowing it's all transient is kind of enough on its own, actually. You know, it's that.
Yes, it's just getting. I think the thing is, the way I do it is I noticed the feeling. I noticed the feeling that when I did get like that, it was like, a tight feeling,
Yes,
an uncomfortable
right.
feeling, and my head's hurting, and then I'm like, oh, okay, so that means there's a lot of thinking going on, and I can't do anything about it just now.
Yeah.
So that's the biggest clue, the feeling, I think.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely, and that takes us very nicely onto this one, which is it's okay to be human. And we don't need to be scared of our feelings. You know, I'm reminded of that wonderful Sid Banks quote, if we just learn not to be afraid of our experience, that alone would change the world. So all they're telling us about our feelings is our thinking in the moment. But I used to think, I really did, that the more intense the feeling, the more that meant I had to pay attention. And now I realize it's just the more intense the feeling, the more my thinking's off track.
Mm-hmm.
The more noisy it is. That's all.
Yeah.
It's not telling you.
I even used to teach people that, you know, as a therapist, when I was a therapist, I even used to teach people, you have to listen to uncomfortable feelings. They really mean something.
Yeah. But again, linking back to the first one, the inside out, they're not telling you anything about the world out there. They can't be.
Mm-hmm.
And they're not, it doesn't mean there's anything wrong with you. We are, you know, thriving for me doesn't mean skipping around happy all the time. Thriving for me is about being fully alive and fully awake and feeling all of it, experiencing all of it, but not being scared by it.
Yeah.
I often say to people, you know, you can feel the feelings, but drop the story. All you have to do is drop the story, and then it's just a feeling, which will pass. And in fact, it passes very quickly when you drop the story, or when you start to question the story. You don't believe the story, because it's never thought, is it? It's thought believed that gets us into trouble. It's thought that doesn't look like thought. It looks like reality. It looks like truth. And what this one's done for me is much less judgment about myself, about other people, you know, because we're all doing the best we can, given the thinking that we've got at the moment that looks true. So, but I love that idea of having this really rich smorgasbord, if you like, of different feelings. Like for me, that's part of the design as well. You know, very often my clients will come to me and they draw a circle like a pie chart, you know, and they'll say, I just want this slice here. I want the rest of my life to be this slice. I don't want all the other stuff. Can you help me get rid of all the other stuff? No. I mean, even if we could, I'm not sure it's desirable. Yeah.
In any case, they'd then pay to go to the cinema to have those feelings.
Well, exactly. Good point. I'd only seen a film called The Wings of Desire. It's not. I wouldn't recommend it, but it's got it's German and it's German subtitles and stuff. But it's a fantastic kind of central idea, which is set in Berlin, and there's all these angels flying around, and they're trying to help humanity, but because they're formless, they can't really do very much. So they float around, and no people, human beings can't see them, except occasionally very young children can see them. So the most they can kind of do is, you know, if somebody's sitting sad and depressed on a park bench, they can sit next to them, and somehow sometimes the human being breathes in new hope, you know, there's some energy passes. But the interesting thing is, in the evenings they all get together, all of these angels, and sort of compare notes, and the biggest single thing they talk about is how jealous they are, how envious they are. And they say things like, oh, I wish I could have one ice cream, or I wish I could just have a cup of coffee, or I saw this couple kissing in the park, I wish I could have just one kiss. And even, I wish I could feel true sadness. You know, so it's all a gift. It's all a gift. Yeah. So that's that one. And then I think this is the last one. Yeah. It's just, you know, it's been said over and over again. Being in the present moment, living in the now. This is one of the biggest things that's changed for me. I realized I just lived in the future all the time. I never thought about the past much, but the future. I was always in something that was happening next week or next month or next year in my head. And it's so much, I think we just thrive more when we are just here now.
It's funny, isn't it? Because we can't really be anywhere else.
Oh, no, of course we can't, except in thought. But yeah.
Yeah, but it's that again, it's so convincing.
Yes.
Thought is so convincing that way. Yeah.
I had a client who was a very stressed CEO. We were talking about this, and he said, you know what? He said, I've realized my whole life I've spent 40% of my time in my thinking about my past, 40% of my time in my thinking about the future. And the 20% where I am in the present moment, I screw that up as well. Bless him.
How can he do that? How can you screw up being now?
Well, you can if you're constantly saying, this isn't good enough.
Oh, yeah.
Right now isn't good enough. You know, I love that Jeff Foster talks about, you know, heaven is the present moment. Hell is wanting the present moment to be different.
Yeah.
That's it. That explains all suffering.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah. So that's been a biggie for me. And the other thing, that last one there about our inner guidance system, or sat nav, or wisdom, whatever you want to call it, just kind of trusting that and relying on that much more than I used to. That's one of the biggest difference, actually. Now I think about it, the way I used to be, I was incredibly, because I was living in the future in my head, I was always very, very planful, very, I mean, with the training that I did, I had a reputation for, you know, and I used to train trainers. I was kind of like the queen of designing training, you know. I mean, it would be like every 5 minutes had multiple layered outcomes. And, you know, I used to be really proud of that. And these days, honestly, I run when I run my Heart of Thriving workshop, I know, honestly, I know what we're going to do for the first 15 minutes. After that, I haven't got a clue. And it's better.
Oh, yeah.
Because how can I possibly plan for, you know, that particular group, that combination, the way they show up, their state of mind in the moment, the kind of, I mean, there's so many gazillion factors that my little mind. So, you know, and I've realized that the more I'm wedded to that incredibly detailed plan, the less available I am to mind, to universal mind, to my own wisdom, to what I'm hearing and seeing in the group out there.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's much better.
Yeah.
So I have a lot more free time.
Yes. Yeah. When you haven't got to be doing all that stuff.
Yeah.
Yes, I never liked doing all of that stuff anyway. But then I would spend all my time thinking I should be.
Right. Yeah.
So you can't win either way, can you? Spend all your time doing, if that's how you think it works. When you know that isn't how it works, it's so much more relaxing and so much more fun.
It's just realizing that we have this, you know, this source, this resource. It's just always kind of got our back. I didn't know that before. I really didn't.
Yeah.
I thought it was all, you know, if it's to be, it's up to me. I've got to do it all. I've got to control it all. I've got to keep all of these plates spinning. I've got to juggle everything. I've got to make it happen. I was never particularly, you know, stressed or anxious about that. I kind of, it was almost like a badge of honor.
What sort of results, what sort of differences do you see in the people that you work with when they start to get this understanding?
Yeah. Oh, can we have another 3 hours? There's so many stories of that. Oh. Well, I mean, they range from, you know, the huge transformations, the huge, you know, everything shifts, to more subtle changes. It's interesting that people often don't see it themselves, except kind of through the rear view mirror. They see how things that they used to do, they just don't do anymore, or things that they didn't used to do, they do, but they want to do. But you know, some of the more dramatic examples that spring to mind. I had a lady quite recently, actually, who hadn't left her house for 28 years. Acute agoraphobia and depression and ME. And yeah, and she came on my workshop 3 months ago.
Huh?
And is now sharing this understanding with her local age concern. And she goes around giving talks to other ME sufferers about how they can recover. And what I love is seeing, like, because people's faces change, don't they?
Yeah, totally.
And everybody, it happened actually for her, she got huge insight on the second day of the workshop. She came in on the third day, and everybody kind of did a double take. It was like, you know, what have you done with so-and-so kind of thing. She honestly, 20 years younger, 20 years younger. Another girl who's 17 who had, I had to look up what it meant. She had trichotillomania. She pulled her hair out really badly. She'd done this from the age of 10, so 7 years. She was getting quite badly bullied and so on at school, at social media. And we had, I think it was 3 conversations. And she just stopped. That was about 5 or 6 years ago. She hasn't done it since. But here's the interesting thing: we didn't talk about the hair pulling once. Not once. She saw something, and it just didn't make sense anymore. And that's what I love about this. It's the kind of way you haven't got to try, you haven't got to be disciplined, you haven't got to use your willpower. It's like the world looks different. The world is different. Life is different. And these changes just kind of happen without us having to do them.
Yeah. Yeah, I was talking to Judy this morning, and Judy's.
I know, I heard.
That was so, first of all, she looks so different from when I first knew her. She looks so different from when I first, which is what reminded me. And then her thing about her nail biting going away, that was so funny.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah, loads of those. But, you know, I mean, perhaps less dramatic ones, but people who are just kind of, people who say things like, I've still got my incredibly busy, so-called stressful job, but I'm not stressed. And I'm getting more done. And where did all this time come from?
Yeah.
You know, and well, and this guy at the weekend I was telling you about in Oxford, my client and friend, who's, is he 20, 21? And all of his friends are kind of really suffering at the moment because their final exams are in 2 weeks. And, you know, it's such a big deal. And he's taking it seriously. He's working really hard, but he's, you know, they all think, they all kind of keep saying to him, what are you on? You know, and can I have some? So it's that kind of clarity of just, you do the next thing and you do the next thing and you do the next thing. And
isn't that lovely though, that what he's on is life?
Yes.
And yes, they can have it.
Yes. Yes. It's available for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those are my things.
So thank you very much. That's lovely. That's been really, yeah, I think that's really clear and a really good way of putting it so that people can, who haven't seen it before and haven't understood before what it's about. I think that's a really lovely way of putting it. Thank you very much. Yeah.
I hope so. I hope so. Yeah. And again, so grateful to you for doing this, and so appreciate all the work that you put in. It's going to be, well, it already is, but it's going to be a wonderful resource.
Yes, yes, in the long run. Yes. So make sure, everybody, that you watch as many videos as you can and subscribe to the channel. But the more you watch the videos, the more that YouTube thinks this is, you know, they know that this is really important. They know it's really important.
I should be pointing lots of people to it. So
thank you very much. So yeah, that's really been lovely. Thanks very much, Kimberly.
Thank you.
So since we don't have any more questions, we'll say goodbye for today. And thank you very much for being here, everyone. And we'll see you again soon. Bye then.
Thank you very much.
Thanks. Bye.